Relationships. I am blind. Every time I go in, I can't figure it out. I feel like it's going to work and it doesn't, and I've messed up. Are you like me? Stop going into approaching relationships blindfolded. So tonight, we're going to get into that. Stay with me. So I'm going to take off the blindfolds for this show so we can have a show tonight. But I want to meet you where you are. I have two very special guests tonight, and I'm humbled and honored to have them on the show for this very special episode talking about relationships. Stop approaching love blindfolded. So I want you to settle in for this tonight. And no matter where you are in your relationship, whether you're single, whether you're plotting your escape, whether you're trying to rekindle the flame, I assure you, I will guarantee that you're going to get something tonight that is absolutely going to help you in your relationship journey. So let me start by introducing the first guest who I just met recently. Her name is Haley Patri. She has helped hundreds of people, maybe even thousands at this point. I think her journey started in like 1997 to get into this arena. But you know what? She's in her second marriage. It's been going strong for 12 years. And she works with couples people from all different situations and helps them to rekindle that happiness that translates to their relationship and translates to their life. And so I'm going to bring Haley on with me right now. Hello, Haley.
Hey, Austin. Happy Friday night.
Happy Friday night. I'm glad to have you here. And so we bring on this next guy. What do you think?
Oh my gosh. I am so excited for your next guest because I adore him. We have officiated weddings together. We have written books together. We have traveled on stages together. And he is a testament to the long-standing happy marriage that takes work, but is worth it.
Yeah, so this next guest, his name is Jim Hetherington. He's beyond a relationship expert. Why? Because next year, he's going to be celebrating his 40th wedding anniversary. So help me welcome the next guest, Mr. Jim Hetherington.
Hey, Austin. Great to see you. And Haley, wonderful to see you.
Hey, Jim.
I was waiting for all the old jokes. That's what I was waiting for.
Oh, don't worry.
That's what was coming.
Don't
Well,
worry.
Jim, as old as I am is as long as you've been married, so it's good.
Well, that doesn't make me feel any younger at all.
Jim, you exude a vibrant energy that I know it translates to your relationship, and it's why you've been able to go this long, because you don't get there by accident. Certainly you may make a right choice, but as we're going to hear from you tonight, I know you're going to be very candid, because earlier Jim and I came on, and I don't know if Haley knows this, but Jim said everything's on the table.
Everything.
So everything's on the table.
I knew Haley wouldn't shy back. I know she'd be happy with that. That's fine.
We're so open, we don't know how to close the book, Austin.
There you go. Well, I'll help you there. So we have a good hour, and we can continue depending on our guests, but I want to hear from you. So we have Mandy. She's saying you both exude vibrant energy. It's awesome. Michelle is with us tonight. Hello, Michelle.
Hey, Michelle.
And so Mandy's saying you exude joy.
Thank you,
that's
Mandy.
Beautiful. So I know Mandy's going to be with us tonight. She's our official spokesperson, so she'll be in the chat. Feel free to type in anything. And so everything's on the table tonight with relationships. So by the way, we want you to listen, but we also want you to type in. If something comes up, share it, because it'll give us the opportunity to talk about it. If you don't share it, we can't talk about it, right? So we're not going to know. So make sure you type in. I got the chat here right in front of me. And I wanted to start off by really painting a not so good picture, and before what we just went through collectively as a human species, if you will, because it's affected everyone, there's relationship challenges. There's the dating world has completely changed. It's not what it used to be. You have single people out there. The rules are just amazing. They're all over the place. People are trying to figure that world out. We have people that, maybe they're asking, can I go back to somebody, a relationship where it didn't work? Can I go back to that, or is it over? I still love this person. They still love me. But every time we get together, it doesn't go anywhere. It explodes. It causes fire. It's no good. And then what about the couple who's in a relationship already, and maybe they love each other, but they're not sure what to do. They can't leave. They can't stay. So we're going to cover the full spectrum. But let me just start by asking you, the two of you, what do you think the major problem is just in relationships in general today? Let's just start there, and then we can kind of dig our way in and go into more detail. So what do you think the major problem is for relationships as a whole today?
Go ahead, Haley.
Jim, you're a gentleman. I was going to defer to you because you've been married for longer. Honestly, Austin, I think the major problem is it's a lack of training and a missing toolkit. We don't send our 16-year-olds out to drive without driver's ed training, lots and lots of practice, and passing that test more than once. And I wish, Jim and I both really wish, not only would people get trained before their parents, but let's have couples trained before they're coupling. And I think that is the biggest challenge. Most couples don't have the skill set to be great at healthy, happy love. Most couples don't have a healthy couple role model. They might come from unhappy marriages that they were raised with. That's the environment they marinated in. They might have many of their friends dealing with divorce or infidelity. So very few of us know where to point the compass and who to follow when it comes to how to mimic healthy love. The good news is, this is why Jim and I are excited to be with you, the skills for healthy love are teachable, learnable, and even a relationship that's in extreme disconnection, once those skills get infused, so much is possible.
That's a beautiful statement you said. And I like this because I like to draw metaphors. Imagine your teenager gets excited about a car, and they just jump in the car and start driving, right? Like you said. But it's almost like if you relied on the biochemistry of the excitement to drive the car, you'd be headed for trouble. But in a relationship, it's like we rely on biochemistry to engage in and think that maybe this is going to last a lifetime or a long-term situation. So I love how you said that. That's a great segue in and of itself. And I love how you said it's teachable and it's learnable, that anybody can learn the skills.
Yeah, and Jim, you see couples at their wedding. I mean, you've been officiating marriages for a very long time. You see couples when they're excited, when it's fresh. What do you find in your work? What's the biggest problem for couples today?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with what you said earlier more, Haley. It's just we're not taught any of that stuff coming up through school. There's no courses. There's nothing really integrated in our society or our culture as a whole on how to be good partners, how to be good friends. We're not even taught how to really be friends with the opposite sex, the same sex. We're not taught any of that stuff as we go through school. And then all of a sudden we hit our 12, 13, 14 years of age, the hormones are going all over the place. The first person that, makes us smile or says something cute or blinks or bats their eyes at us, we're head over heels and in love. And off we go down that train. And that's really what it is. And I think a large part of it is, as you said, Haley, we've all been raised in different environments. And so we have expectations of what relationships are or aren't. And we enter into a long-term relationship with somebody and we never discuss that. We don't talk about our expectations. We don't talk about the ground rules. And let's talk about ground rules. I mean, driver's ed is one thing, but how about sports? I mean, none of us would enter into sport, whether it's hockey or football or basketball, without knowing basic rules. because you wouldn't want to look like a complete imbecile going out to the basketball court.
That's true.
You know,
Jim, have you seen me
wrong
on the
thing.
basketball court at 5 feet tall? That is exactly how I look.
Yeah, but we know, you know, it's not that we're perfect when we enter into, you know, Little League or any other sport. It's just, but we have some basic idea of what's going on. We've been taught. Our parents spend more time teaching us how to play sports and get along well on teams than they do in the arena of life, getting along as a team, as a couple.
And there's
And
one
that's
other
the
thing
sad
I think
reality.
you've seen, Jim, in your 4 decades of marriage in a way that Austin and I haven't experienced, which is 4 decades ago, we didn't have the distraction of technology, iPhones, Androids, and social media. And one of the biggest problems that I see, but very few people actually come to marriage counseling for, is a lack of eye contact and presence. We are just simply in a different reality right now. And
Mhm.
if we're not connecting shoulder to shoulder, heart to heart, eye to eye, hip to hip, if we're not giving square on presence to our partners, yeah, how can we have meaningful conversations and connection if we actually feel invisible most of the time? So this didn't exist 4 decades ago, where you see couples at a restaurant and everyone's looking down and scrolling. This
Oh my
didn't
goodness.
exist where the family dinner table was 5 pieces of tech on the table. And so I really think we need to go back in time for some of our best practices about how to go to work, whether it's one person or both people, make sure our kids are attended to, make sure that the dinner table is attended to, and make sure that there's some quiet time in the evening for people to just say, hey, honey, how was your day? How are you doing? You know, what do we want to plan next? And we're just very busy right now. Too much extracurricular, too much tech, too much of everything. There's a lot of noise in the background for relationships. And I know when my husband is looking down at his phone, I gently grab his cheeks and I bring him up back to eye contact, or I'll just wait and he'll say, why aren't you talking? I said, I'll wait till you're available.
Yeah. And I'd like to say distraction is everywhere. Presence is rare. So
Yeah.
before we go any further, though, I want to honor Lizzie here. Lizzie T, we're so glad you showed up here today.
Wow.
Because you know why? Because you, and I didn't even know this about you, but there's examples out there like Jim and like Haley, like you're building now with your husband, so that we can learn. You know, there's a quote that says success leaves clues, but we typically liken that to financial success. But what about relationships? What about people like Jim, people like Haley, people like Lizzie that are out there and it's almost like behind the curtain. We don't talk about it as much. That's why we're having this conversation tonight, so that you can get something and go into the next situation with a greater perspective and make a better choice for you. And I want to share this. I saw this funny video, to your point, and it was this woman, and they were at a restaurant. She was eating, and she had the phone attached to her head, so that the husband would look at her face. You know, so, you know, we're laughing about it, but it's the truth, and it can
It's
be
a
very
sad reality.
painful, especially when you're in a relationship that's not working. How easy is it? Like, you don't have to face it. You can just go. You can just pull the phone out of your pocket and like, oh no, I'm taking care of something for work. I have to look something up, right? And you're right. It just creates a whole nother dynamic and a
We
whole
don't
nother
attune.
layer of
Yeah,
challenge.
we don't attune. And it's like when we're raising babies, a baby doesn't want you patting the diaper with one hand and cooking over here. It's that eye contact. It's that meaningfulness. And as adults, we need to be attuned to as well. And it's so missing. You know, I wish more couples could rewind time and come back to how it used to be.
There's some of that tradition, and you know, and the work that I've done in relationships. And by the way, I love this contrast, because the two of you, you know, you're building this great relationship, and I'm over here. You know, I've like taken the long road. It's like, it seems like everything in my life has been the long, hard road, but I'm still going to arrive on time. And but the point is that you have this contrast, and the work that I've done with couples and relationship events, it can change in like seconds. It literally can change in seconds. And how does it change in seconds? It's the moment when a couple is completely present with each other, and that can be felt instantly. And usually the woman, the feminine energy, feminine is very attuned to presence. And I don't think the masculine realizes how in tune the feminine is, because to the feminine, that connection is life. And it is for men too, and the masculine. But I feel like the feminine is more in tune, and you can help me out here and tell me if I'm going down the right road here. Jim, you both know, because Jim, you've had to learn it over 40 years. And Haley, you probably know it, just being married once and married again. And
yeah.
So what do you say to that?
Yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, women, they're much better at the emotion. You know, it's easier for them to share, engage, be a little bit more sensitive around that area. Whereas guys, we're just taught to shut that down and to turn that off. And then all of a sudden we get into a relationship, and now we're supposed to share emotions. We're supposed to talk about our feelings, and we don't know how. Like, we got no clue. And so it's something that we have to learn as guys. We have to learn, and girls just need to learn that. Not learn, but we need to recognize that we're completely different species when it comes to processing that stuff. And just, I think that's one of the first ground rules, I think, with couples, is just learning how each other processes, how each other thinks, like you say, guys, back in the day, with the caveman day, they come back after a long, arduous day out hunting, and they just poke the fire, and so that's what guys do when we need to think. We just kind of poke the fire, like we just sit and stare, and that's how we process. Whereas girls, you're much better at processing it verbally and articulating it and stuff. We just poke the fire and think, and it takes us a little longer sometimes to get there, but we get there.
We do get there. So we've hit on some of the things that can happen as far as the challenges go. Distraction, couples not connecting. We're dealing with a different dynamic in today's social system, if you will, and that certainly creates a lot of challenges. And I feel like the dynamic has changed, and I feel like there's a generational thing that's happening as well. So I just want to grab Michelle's share here, because this is interesting, and I think this happens. This can happen a lot with when someone is, and you can speak to this, but how we show up in a relationship, because this is another juxtaposition in relationships where you have the feminine it can be more masculine, because we have more single people today, and then we have this masculine who's trying to be more feminine because they think that's what women want, but it's really not what women want, or the feminine wants. And it creates a lot of confusion around, how do I show up? And this could be whether you're single or whether you're in a relationship, because how you show up is not just after you get married. Like, how you show up is consistent. And this points to, we can get into this. We only have an hour.
Awesome. That's such a good question.
Let me pause for a minute. This, for everybody listening, this is going till 9 p.m. I'm going to put this out there right now. If you're enjoying this, if we go past 9 o'clock, we need to switch platforms. So if you want this to keep going, you don't have to type it in now, but if you want this to keep going, I want you to type in "keep going" at some point, because that'll tell me that we'll either do a Zoom follow-up call or we'll do another live feed, because this is being broadcast out to Apple TV, Amazon, Roku. This is going out everywhere in the worldwide internet TV land. So we're having some deep, real discussion here. So we need to know what you want us to do. And if you have a question, I love the comments. The comments are coming in. There's a lot of people there. As a woman, I would like man to understand me. Okay, that's another really great thing. So why don't I pause? We'll hit some of these. We got a lot more comments. And then we'll
Austin, I think it's so awesome that we're talking about the masculine and feminine. And maybe we'll clarify that for our listeners. We don't mean male and female. So we don't mean your gender or your gender identification. We mean the energy about you. We all have within us masculine and feminine energy. For some of us, it's in balance. For some of us, it's out of balance. Certainly in my house, we are stereotypically gender swapped. For many years, my husband was a stay-at-home dad. I was the sole provider. We would make jokes and talk about our masculine and feminine energy. But I think what is really important to your question, how do we show up? As you are. The best way to show up is as you really, really are, because that's the only way that is sustainable.
That's
And
scary.
most of us,
That's too
yeah,
scary. What if I'm not accepted? What if I show
perfect.
up as I am and I'm not loved?
Perfect, because you know how much energy it takes to be not you and try to do that for a few decades? So if we show up as our best fake selves for dating, then our fake self falls in love with their best behavior fake self. And I'm trying to please you and you're trying to please me and none of it's real. Then we move in together and we go, oh, I can take off the mask. Thank God. And we both look at each other and say, who's this person? I want the old one back. And so the only safe way to get into love is show up as you are and wait till somebody likes you exactly as you're not, exactly as you are, and exactly as you're growing
Okay.
to become.
So I want to hit this. Single mother,
Hmm.
wearing both roles, the provider and the nurturer.
I was her once.
Okay. So this is great conversation. So, and you know, how does that feminine show up if they're playing both roles? Can they be lost in an identity, in a role, and turn off the attraction?
Yeah, I think it takes, so if we're talking man and woman instead of masculine and feminine, I would say if a female is a single mom and she is high in her testosterone because she's working hard and she's driving and pushing in business and she's balancing all the roles, she's going to be a great fit for a man or woman who likes somebody that's got strong masculine and is a doer and is a survivor. And that's not for everyone. And that's why I say we just need to show up as we are. My husband loves being in the audience when I'm on stage working. He is not offended by someone who might earn more or be able to do different things. He's quite happy to rock the house and the kids, but that's not for every man. And so we just got to show up as we are and meet and wait till that person says, you're refreshing. Exactly the way you are is what I've been looking for. Because it's just not possible to sustain it long term when we're being anything but ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can, it's a great conversation. I'm going to go to Jim here in a moment. But I can share my story. It was that fear of not being good enough, which prevented me from showing up who I was. And I think this is a challenge for a lot of people today that are in the single space because of the misrepresentation that happens. And namely, what I see is that women, or I'm going to use women and men for this conversation, but I see women that perceive aggressive males, right, that are toxic behind the curtain, but they interpret that aggressiveness as some kind of like that primal thing that we have in our species, and they're drawn to it, and then they end up getting hurt by the person, and then they go out and rinse and repeat. And I think the same thing can happen from the masculine to feminine, where masculine can perceive that toxic femininity as being that healing force, but it ends up being, like that maybe that openness, because like, what's the thing? Harville Hendricks says, the quicker you fall in love, the deeper the hurt. The quicker you fall in love, the deeper the hurt. So if you think about that, these people that fall head over heels, and then, in some of these relationships, unfortunately, you watch it play out on Facebook. Oh, God. So I'm going to pause. I want to go to Jim, because Jim, you've been listening, and I want to hear your perspective as somebody you're going to be celebrating your 40th year of marriage here. It's a beautiful, and and quite frankly, like, I'm wondering, will I ever experience that? So having you as a model is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So Jim, what do you say about all this?
No, I appreciate that, Austin. Thanks. And it is a beautiful thing. I have to say, it is a beautiful thing. I think it's important, that we be true to who we are. I mean, we have to be real, because, let's face it. When people first meet one another, everybody's on their best behavior, right? They're polished, they're shined, they're holding doors open, they're doing all the right things. And it's through that process. We can't be so taken by the glamour that we don't ask the hard questions. We need to know who that person is. We need to ask the questions that pokes through that bubble, if you will, so that we understand who the true person is. So I think there's a responsibility for us to be true to ourselves, but at the same time, we need to work on being the person others want to be around. If someone is, if their true nature is a typical, a typical A personality, a driver personality, and this could be a male or female, masculine, feminine,
Sure.
it could be either or. But if they become successful as a driver because they're growing up in the corporate ladder, they're rewarded well for the way they manage, the way they do those kind of things, and then they turn and expect to do that same thing in a relationship. Well, they'll need to dial that back a little bit and let a little bit more of the softer side come out in a relationship, because not everybody wants to hang around a driver personality, that's up, running 100% all the time. So there needs to be that balance. We need to learn a balance of being true to ourselves, but at the same time working on that self and being in a place or becoming the person others want to hang out with.
And our standards, right? If our standards are high and our speed is fast, and we do that often, then we can make other people feel small or less than inside that, especially if our standards and expectations of self extend out from us, and they tend to.
Sure, because let's take a driver personality. They're typically going to want somebody a little bit softer, a little bit quieter, a little bit more reserved. Why? Because that's a comfort place for them. Because they need a soft place to land after going hard and driving hard and doing the stuff. They need a soft place to land. And so that kind of person that's a soft place to land is a little bit, gentler in their personality, may not be the best person that will accept the way they respond as that driver. So they need to learn, and that's why they're attracted. That's why that's sometimes the perfect matched opposite for that person is somebody that's a little bit softer, because they need that. And I think that's really what it is in relationships. Like, I think of my wife and I, when we first met, my wife was the extrovert. She loved being around people. She was re-energized being around people and socializing and doing that stuff. I'm an introvert. I recharge on my own. I don't need to be around tons of people to recharge. And so that was a real problem for us. She wanted to go till 2 and 3 in the morning. I was ready to go home at 10 or 11 o'clock. I was okay getting away from people. But now, we've come to that place right in the middle where we complement each other in all of those aspects, because we've learned to respect both sides of that. But so often, people don't do that. They just say, no, this is what I need, and this is what I want, and this is what I'm going to get. And then they continue to, believe that a relationship is going to evolve healthy that way.
And there's
so I want
some
to grab
science,
this here,
right?
Michelle's. Maybe you can speak to this, Jim, or this is something. Michelle, I honor you for putting this up, because this is I think this is reality, for a lot of single people out there. So, what do you think? I'm going to go to Jim first, because I want to hear what he has to say, and then I want to hear what you have to say, Haley.
Yeah. So I think, again, it goes back to the point I was talking about, Michelle, where, if a woman has been single, or a person has been single for a long period of time, and yes, they become independent, looking after themselves, and they get their life kind of in order, get everything kind of the way they want to have. But you have to decide, is that what you want for the long term, or is your long term to get into a relationship? If your long term is to get back into a relationship, then you need to work on your relationship skills, not just your independent skills. And so you need to decide what you want. As a woman or as a man, if you like being single, you enjoy being single, then set up your life and get all your ducks in a row and just have everything the way you want it. But if your desire is to enter back into a relationship, then you need to work on your relationship skills. You need to work on those things we talked about earlier, about being that person others want to be around. And so there's nothing wrong with a strong, dependent woman that can take care of things and look after herself. I mean, those are wonderful traits. But you have to consider how they're going to blend with a relationship, if that's really what your desire is.
Yeah, and I think it really depends on the person. As a woman, I'll just say it depends on the woman. I was really the opposite. I left my first marriage when my son was just a baby. He's 15 now, and he was almost 4 when I met my husband. And everything that he could bring to my life and our life was so welcome. Being willing to hop in and snuggle at bedtime, welcome. Being willing to clean up if I was cooking, welcome offering the co-parent. So it really is individual to each person. Some of us have had such damaging experiences in relationship that we make a decision single is safer. And then we might get really used to single is something I can control. And we might finally heal and settle into, I got this. I don't need anybody. And it's healthy not to need anything outside of yourself. But it depends on your perspective. My perspective was I was very open to create family again, love again, more children again. And I was very open to allowing somebody into that life. So I think it comes down to each of us, but there's some really cool science behind why sometimes we pick our opposites. And I think, our immune system is going to look for, if we're thinking of, people getting together for evolution reasons and procreation,
Sure.
my immune system is looking for anything I have as a deficiency. It's looking for a partner that has that as a proficiency. And that's where we sometimes get into trouble in actually having a relationship with our opposite is we are literally so different. There's a reason we're drawn to that. So we actually want to help each other grow and evolve. I want what I'm not good at to get impacted
Yes.
positively from you. And I want to help you with those things that are yours. And in our house, I'm always saying to my husband, speed up. And he's telling me, slow down. And in the middle, there's a really balanced human being. Hopefully one of our kids will turn out that way.
Yeah.
That's
Somebody
great. I'm
put
going
in
to
there-
go to, go ahead.
go ahead.
Jim.
No, I was just going to say, I saw somebody put a comment in there about being balanced. And I think that's so true, because that's exactly it. It's just finding that balance between. But entering into a relationship, we have to realize right from the get-go that it's not going to be 100% about us. Like we can't have our way all the time. We can't have everything the way we want. There has to be some give and take. There has to be that, to find that balance between the two lives.
Yeah, and I want to share something. But first, I'm going to use this again, not as a blindfold, but I'm going to use this as Arnold Schwarzenegger. I pump muscles, right? Why am I talking about Arnold? Here's why. Because what Arnold Schwarzenegger would do, he would look in the mirror and he'd pump up and he would literally physically look at his body and he would see where he was deficient. And where he spotted the deficiency, he would immediately immerse himself on that body part. So instead of sticking to his routine, he would break away from the routine. He would immerse himself on whatever area it was until he built the muscle up to where he wanted it to be. And I'm bringing that up because how often in a relationship, can we look at that? And I know for me, I didn't want to look at my deficient areas because it was attached to my worth. You see? And so the moment and I think that the other topic I wanted to bring up was we all need healing at some level. And Harville Hendricks talked about this again. He's changed because I was thinking about this before and I studied him and he's actually changed the way he feels about it. But he felt that the partner you meet is supposed to complete the healing where the parents fell short. And I disagreed with that. And he disagrees with it, not completely, but at some level, it's not 100% true because there's you can create a level of healing within yourself where you don't need anybody, right? And I think that's where we want to get to, where we don't need anybody, but we seek for that counterbalance, that complement that we want to go through life. It's normal and natural to be there. And I think it is a normal, natural progression, and it can augment our experience. And it does impact our biochemistry. It does expand our lives when we're with the right partner. Mm-hmm. So
you bring up something so powerful, though, there, Austin, about completing what we call sometimes the father-daughter dance or the mother-son dance. We do tend in our first love to end up choosing somebody subconsciously who has exactly the traits we most disliked about our parents, that we didn't have the assertion as children or the emotional maturity to resolve. And we end up with a partner and one day we look up and say, oh my gosh, I am dating my mother or my father. But what's really powerful when we acknowledge that is what we could do instead is we could accept that it takes one before it takes two, meaning it takes one whole self entering into a relationship before we expect two people to have a whole healthy relationship. We could do our counseling, our personal growth, our coaching, our therapy before we enter love. And we could complete those parts of our childhood. We could come into relationship with an awareness of what was not, having closure about our childhood experience. We could close that before love. We just don't tend to. We tend to attempt to get closure on our childhood inside love, and then we blame our partners for why it isn't working so well, and we don't realize we're completing an old story. Sometimes, like in Jim's case, couples can reinvent themselves multiple times throughout the journey. Many
Yes.
other couples exit the highway of love when it gets tough and they realize they've married their parent and they don't go through the restoration.
Mm-hmm.
So right on. And can we get the perspective that we need before we go in, before we go into number one or number two, or maybe number three? Can we make those corrections? And that's why we have Haley Patri and Jim Hetherington and myself. I'm going to throw myself in that arena because a coach, a mentor can completely change your relationship journey. And
you did something so brave, Jim. Austin, you and I are both so lucky to be with Jim tonight because him and Mary could have chosen to exit the highway multiple times.
yes,
There's something really special and different about them that they did not, and that they were able to do their personal growth inside of reinventing their marriage. So teach us, Jim, how did you and Mary re-choose each other and stay? Because a lot of couples going through tough times, they don't stick around to see it through.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to share that, because for me, it was, well, for Mary and I, like if you asked her, she would tell you the same thing. It was probably 10, 12 years before we really started to kind of gel and mesh together. We really struggled and battled. And I'll take responsibility for it, because I was the guy that said, I'd be a happier man if my wife did this. I'd be a much happier wife, and it was always blaming my environment, blaming my wife, blaming everything around me. And so I took responsibility one day and I said, no, it needs to start here with me. And that's why I teach today that we need to take the responsibility and become the very best version of who we are before we enter into a relationship.
ding, ding, ding.
We have a responsibility to become our very best. We don't need to get into a relationship to have someone complete us. If anybody comes up to you and says, you complete me, I encourage you to run the other way.
Run!
Because you do not need
I'm
to
out of
want
here.
to get in. That's right. Sport that headband and start running, because you don't need someone to complete.
So Tom Cruise was all wrong.
That's right.
Jerry Maguire, not
wrong.
true.
He had it all wrong. We need to come into a relationship. As Haley said, we need to come into the relationship whole. That doesn't mean perfect. That just means being complete, understanding who we are, knowing what our sense of values are, what is important to us, so that we don't just get swept under with what our partner wants. Right? We need to know what our identity is in that. You do not need someone. What happens if you've got two people that are whole and complete entering into a relationship? Now they complement one another. Now you want to take each other to that next level. You want them to become their very best, or even a better version of them, because you are your very best. When we become our best, we cause others around us to become our best. And that's how you want to enter into a relationship. So I would suggest that if it takes, 5 extra years or 10 extra years or whatever extra years to get to that place where you find that person that you complement rather than complete, is the way to go. And so that's what I discovered, about 10 or 12 years into my marriage, is that I was pointing the fingers at my wife, but I was the one that I needed to control, because I was the only one that I could control. I was the only one that I could change. I couldn't change my wife. As hard as I wanted her to change to be this perfect, made up version of a super mom and a super wife and everything else that I had in my mind, I couldn't
Get her in here. Let's see if we can change her now. Get her over here.
She's so cute and sweet.
I know. She's a sweetheart. Absolutely. Well, that's why they're such a beautiful couple. And I keep referring to Harville Hendricks, but I guess I studied his work. you know, he always talks about, he gets like, he talks about couples. He basically says when the crap hits the fan, when the shit hits the fan, that's the moment. The moment after that is where you build from. And most couples don't make it there. And Jim, I think you're a living testament to that, because that, like, I'm sure that happened. You said, you know, for 10 years, you mentioned earlier, where you were just right. Should I leave? Should I stay? Should I leave? Right? Did you go through that? So
oh, sure. Yeah. I took my car. I actually parked it out in a conservation area, and I was just going to go for a walk, and I wasn't coming home. Like, it was at that level. That was at that level of my life. I was just completely distraught. I was completely depressed. I was completely upset. I completely decided I made the wrong choice. And I was just walking off into the sunset.
Wow.
And I wasn't coming back. And it was just one of those divine intervention moments that I just said, wait a second, you know, I'm the problem. Let's go, as Michael Jackson used to sing, let's go look at the man in the mirror. That's where we need to start. And so I had to have that face to face, you know, heart to heart look at my own self and say, okay, you're no Jim, you're no Prince Charming. Let's deal with this stuff first, and let's get real. And, you know, to your point, Austin, you know, when the crap hits the fan, you got a choice there. You either decide that that's where it turns, or the person can just blame the other person, say, oh yeah, it's their fault the crap hit the fan, right? You know, and just blame it on the other and walk away from it. So there's a choice that needs to happen.
Yeah, and I think this is I'm going to hit this because all things are on the table. What about the passion? Passion's not there, Jim. You know, you're an expert in relationships. Haley, I don't feel the passion anymore. I'm out of here.
Sure. I mean, it all depends on. Let's face it. You know, we're all going to change. And so if we enter into a relationship and it's all a physical thing when we first get married or we first get into a relationship with someone, we have to realize that our bodies are going to change. Everything is going to change over time. And so I always tell people that they need to remember the I do's. They need to remember why they wanted to be with that person in the first place. If it was just for the sex, then you did it for the wrong reason. If it was just the physical attraction, you need to go back and say, what else attracted me to them? It had to be more than their body, and it had to be more than just the sex. There had to be a little bit more to it. So look back and say, okay, what is it? You know, sex becomes one of the hardest, you know, one of the breaking points of most relationships, but it's something that we probably spend 5 to 10%, maybe even 2 to 5% of our time doing.
Well, if we look at our
numbers are a little high.
Yeah,
right? Unless we're doing
I gotta
it 24
challenge that.
hours a day.
If we
You'd
look
have
at
to
our
bring Arnold
Yeah, where are
back
you
on.
getting those numbers from?
Yeah, Jim. Oh my gosh. So if we look at the week, folks, we have 168
Sure.
hours in the week.
Yeah, we got
If you and your
168
partner
hours.
are rocking it. I mean, if you're making love every single day, let's say you're spending 20 minutes in bed 5 days a week, like that's just, you know, an hour and a half out of 168 hours
Sure.
in the week.
An hour
And
half.
that would be excellent.
An hour and a half. That's just a quickie.
But you know, but I think that what I think is equally to think about, talking about passion. Number one, if you don't have passion, don't get married. You need that. Now it's going to evolve over time, but if you've had it, you can always recreate it. You can always.
And sex drives aren't equal, folks. You know, sex
That's
drives.
another compatibility thing. Let's talk about this.
And sex drives are not static. They are fluid and they change and they go through seasons. Women and men peak at different age. We may go through reproductive, you know, unfortunately, we might go through reproductive cancers. We might go through challenges, either cardiovascularly, genitally. We might go through caregiver burnout if we are taking care of somebody, and we might put shame around sex and pack it up in a box. And so we've got to understand that our rhythm together isn't always going to be in sync. So we need to bring a lot of patience to the area of passion and intimacy. We've got to understand that romance and intimacy are a separate subject from sex itself. You know, some couples have amazing intimacy. They tenderly hold each other, kiss each other. They might even sleep skin to skin. And for whatever reason, sex is not a possibility. I know other couples that have sex 3 times a week for a chemical release. They don't even like each other. And so ideally, we want them both. But one doesn't mean the other.
Right. And what I was going to say is, and sometimes like what I think could adds to the flame is when you're not in the bedroom, but you're creating polarity. Like there's healthy ways to create polarity throughout the week where you can start to build that passion so that it's not all in the bedroom. So you can still feel that passion, right?
Can we name it?
What's that?
Can we name it?
Yeah.
So it's called Takeoff and Landing, and it takes 5 seconds, folks. Every time when you're in a relationship, every time one of you enters the bed, the room, or the nest, if you live together, that is a landing. And every time one of you leaves the bed, the room, or the nest, that's a takeoff. And we can either choose to acknowledge our partner with love, a quick kiss on the forehead, a little squeeze on the shoulder, like you look wonderful today, or we can choose to ignore them and stay on our phone or stay on our computer and let them feel like a ghost. And so we can build connection in all these little micro moments of love, just like a microaggression, they add up. These are those little micro moments for connection. And all those little kisses or those little hugs or those little bits of eye contact, when you come home at the end of the evening and your partner reaches out to touch you, you feel like they're allowed to. But if those micro moments are missing and your partner comes at you, going straight for what they might want
For them. Yeah.
It's a lot of catching up to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a beautiful, beautiful way to say it, taking off and landing. And even in the in-between, a text message, I'm thinking of you, whatever. Those things are important. Now, again, they can be toxic too.
And I always tell guys,
but speaking of language.
Yeah.
I always tell guys if they're planning on having a romantic evening on a Saturday night, the foreplay starts Monday morning. Like it runs through the week. It's just
hold on here.
It's
hold
just
on.
exactly what you're saying, Haley.
Whoa,
Tim's playing the long game. There's a lot of vacuuming.
No, go ahead.
Now that I've got everybody's attention.
So say that again. Let's grab that again.
So if let's say that we decide Saturday night that's going to be the night that we're getting together and we're rocking the boat. It starts Monday morning, working through the week. You don't just show up, guys, on Saturday night saying I'm ready, right? You're working through the week to woo your wife, to to be passionate about her, just show that passion. And I think that's the thing is, again, it's coming back to identifying and using the right words, and defining the words. We say passion. Okay, what do you mean by passion? Passion isn't just sex. There's more to that.
And speak in her love language or his love language.
Yeah,
so we tend to give out love in the way that's easy for us, but we might not be giving it out in the way our partner most wants to receive it. So if we know our partner values quality time, we need those eye contact moments. If they value words, they need those sweet text messages and the I see you, I hear you, you matter. But yes, rubs. A full cup will help.
Or hand rubs, according to Lizzie, and there used to be a statistic that almost 80% of massages lead to sex. So it depends on your love language. How about a massage? No, this is great conversation and needed conversation. And I think you said it takes one earlier. And I think one person can start to, if you've had passion in your relationship, if you married, for the right reasons and you had passion and you feel like it's lost, you can begin to rekindle it. And by taking some of these tips and put your stuff aside, it's so easy to go through the week feeling like the person didn't do this. There's maybe some things they did, or you're not feeling loved, but can we give what we most want to receive? And again, I'm speaking in terms of I know there's situations that are toxic and bad, and you should get out of those as soon as you can. Okay, seek help for those. But I'm talking in that range of what we would call normal. What if you want to classify it, right? Can we
a healthy relationship that's just disconnected?
Yeah. Exactly, a healthy relationship that's disconnected, but you're feeling like, oh, the passion's gone. I'm gonna go do something else.
One thing I think we need to, and I think so many people get tempted, Austin, but a tip that a friend and mentor of mine once shared with me when I was in a period of disconnection, he said, see your husband every day through a new lens of contribution. I know you're mad at him for a lot of things right now, and you're disappointed about a lot of things, but could you go to bed every night and wake up every morning? And instead of a regular gratitude practice, could you have a him specific gratitude practice where you see him as a contribution to your life? Because it doesn't matter if we're male or female or however we identify, we will lose our mojo, we will lose our sex drive, we will lose our affinity for our partners when we see them through the lens of what's missing. And it is a real turn on for ourselves to see our partners again as all the blessings that they are in our life. So we're the first place to start to fall back in love with them. We've got to change what lens we're looking at them through. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes a relationship or marriage gets to a really disconnected place. But if there's one thing your partner does, do they wipe the snow off the car for you? Is there a little way that they smile or grin? Is there something that is their show of love for you? And if we can count those little blessings, we can turn that appreciation for them back on. I think appreciation's got to come back on before passion comes back on, and love comes back on.
Yeah. So we have 9 minutes left in this show, in this hour. And if you want us to continue, I just need you to let us know. I would like to talk about some of the key things. I wanted to go like real foundational because a lot of us, we get into relationships and the foundation's missing. It's not even strong enough to continue to build. And I think we talked a little bit about that through the healing process and what does it take? So I'd love to hit on that. I consider myself an emotional intelligence expert based on the training that I've received. And I wanted to talk about that and how can we get beyond compromise? That's something we can talk about as well, because compromise is a buzzword in relationships, but and it might be relevant in some cases, but I think we can do better. So Mandy, you should be able to get a massage. Some people are triggered by touch. They might feel like it leads to more. So yeah, women and men get massages all the time that do not lead to sex. But if you're in the context of a relationship,
state our boundaries. I think it's up to us to teach people how to love us and state our boundaries. So we don't want to make our partners read our minds. We also don't want to cause our partner to have touch or request anxiety, because they don't know if we're going to shut them down or allow them to be close to us. So it's better if we just say, honey, this is really beautiful. By the way, I've had a very long day, and this is as far as I'm picturing it going for us tonight. Can we just have a cozy swap massage, slow dance tonight, so that our partner knows they don't have to go through the rejection of thinking, does she want it? I'm going to try. She might shut me down. If we shut our partners down so often, they might get scared to try again. Then we might feel not beautiful, not seen, or not wanted. So mind reading is not a skill that Jim or I teach for couples. And always encourage you, say the whole truth. And it can be awkward, but it is healthier than having your partner guess or having you fear touch because you fear that they think it's going to lead somewhere. So just name it.
Yeah. And I want to bring this up. I think this is really important. And I think this is relevant for all communications. If you want to be a better communicator, this is something that will definitely serve you in your relationships. We have a tendency to go back in and we think it's the same every time. It's like when I open the door opens. The door is the same color and I just pull the handle and it opens every time. And there's place for that in our lives. But it's not like that. It shouldn't be a place for our relationships. So what I mean is, anytime you engage with an individual, do your best to throw all assumptions out the window, because I'm dynamic. I'm a dynamic person. You're a dynamic person. And where you are in this moment, I might look at you and I might have an assumption of what I think it is, but if I can go in with an open mind going, I don't know where they are, let me understand with an open heart, let me see what's going on before I instantly start to get into response. And if I can be open to the moment and open to the individual in the moment, I can learn something new about the individual that gives me a perspective on myself, on me showing up better each time. And I think a lot of times, in relationships, we go in with a static mentality. It's, and it's not. We can fall into that routine. And I think that's a mistake. I think we need to create that, like you were saying earlier, those micro moments, even if they're connection or openness. hey, are you good in this moment? Like, talk to me. And maybe that moment needs to be an hour, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe there's something happening that we need to be present for. We need to put everything else aside and, our to-do list. You need me right now. I'm going to let me be with you right now. And we step into that moment. And I think they're the moments that really build strong connection, when that person feels like they're the most important thing in the world to you. And I think that takes that openness and that ability to step into what is dynamic.
Yeah, and see people new every day, right? We either open that door with a full list of their remembered faults, or we open that door with a fresh willingness to set an intention for loving possibility. And I mean, Jim, you must have done this a few thousand times more than Austin and I have.
Yeah, no, and it's I think it's really becoming aware of where the person is, right? I mean, my wife is my wife every day. She's still married, she's still, that sweet person. But sometimes when things are going on in her environment, a work environment, a home environment, or a neighborhood environment, or a relationship environment outside of ours, it could change and reflect on how she responds in a certain in a certain situation. And I always tell couples, like, just learn to recognize, the signs, learn to recognize and be aware, but also be aware of the, the natural things that are going on. For example, women, when they, they're going through their cycle, that's not a good time to start bringing up heavy, debatable subjects. I mean, you just have to be sensitive. You have to be aware of what's going on. So I think, it's just being aware of where the person is. I mean, I'm a lovable, very patient man, but I've got days where things can just really try me, and so sometimes I respond in ways that I don't want to respond. And so it's just being sensitive to other people. And I think that's just part of growing as a person, is just not being so self-absorbed and so self-focused and so self-centered that we're not aware of our partner and aware of what they're feeling or perhaps experiencing in the moment.
Jim, beautiful. We're at 8:58, so I'm going to bring this to a close. What I'm going to do, we have a couple keep goings. I need you to type in keep going, because this is being broadcast on E360 TV, which is going out to Apple TV, Amazon, Roku, and Fire. This is a special presentation tonight on relationships. And if you want us to keep going, what we'll probably do is take like a 10, 15-minute break, and we'll come back on, and we'll give you time to think about it. Maybe you have a question. Maybe you're just joining, like Carolyn's just joining. So she's probably, that's Michelle. Keep going. Caroline, good evening. I got an amen, Jim. I got an amen, brother. Amen. So 8:58. So why don't we do this? Just one small clip, because I want to round it out for this show. And then I'm going to post another link on my wall. You're going to have to look for it. So I'm going to create another link. It'll get posted. We'll do 9:15. So I need 10 seconds. 10 seconds. Haley, go ahead.
At 9:15, let's talk about forgiveness. Because if you want to love someone for the long haul, you're going to need to learn to forgive over and over again. See you back.
Got it. Jim.
9:15. Let's talk about expectations and what that evolves around.
Okay. And I want to talk about emotional intelligence and some of the foundational things that I struggled with lack of worth. So thank you so much for joining us. For everybody that's on the social media platforms and E360, Apple TV, all those good places. Follow us on Facebook. Our names are there. Austin J. Haynes, Haley Patri, Jim Hetherington. Search it. We're here. Connect with us. We love you. We want the best for you and your relationship. So we'll see you in about 15 minutes back on my page.
All right.
Or on YouTube. Bye for now.